E ripartiamo con un altro panel dove abbiamo tre leading investitori e investitrici del settore EdTech e non solo, in Italia e anche a livello internazionale. E abbiamo la moderazione di Dalila Rubino, Communication e PR Manager di xEdu. Andrea Chirolli, il CEO di Futura, che adesso avrà una notizia da darvi, non ve la spoilerò, ma forse l'avete già letta su LinkedIn, quindi tra poco l'annunciamo. Sara De Benedetti, Investment Manager di Oltre Impact. Enrico Poli, direttore di Zanichelli Ventures, e Alexandre Glaser, principal di Educapital. Alexandre capisce un po' l'italiano, ma questo panel sarà in inglese perché chiaramente è più semplice per lui. Alexandre, can you hear us? Are you there?
Yes, English is better, I think.
Hello.
There you are. Hi, Alexandre. How's it going in France?
It's cool, and a very important game tonight, but all good.
Thank you, Alexandre. Dalila, the floor is yours.
Same weather as here, anyway. Hello, hi, welcome. I do apologize that we are the reason why you stopped talking and networking from the break we had, but as Matteo said, I'm Dalila Rubino, Communication and PR Manager of xEdu. xEdu is the leading EdTech accelerator here in Europe, and we are based in Helsinki. Well, my colleagues are in Helsinki. I work from Torino. We are based in Helsinki and Torino. And I have the pleasure here to have here with us Sara De Benedetti from Oltre Impact, Andrea Chirolli, I have to read them because I don't, from Futura, and Enrico Poli from Zanichelli Ventures. So I would like to start by asking you guys to introduce yourself a little bit and just explain briefly what you do in your ventures. Alexandre, shall we start with you? Tell us about Educapital.
Perfect. Yes, so Educapital, we're an EdTech and Future of Work focused fund, so we invest in EdTech and Future of Work companies, mostly at the Series A stage in Europe. We typically write checks of, let's say, 2 to 5 million. We tend to lead and co-lead rounds. Any segment within EdTech and Future of Work, so K-12, higher ed, life and learning, corporate training. And in the Future of Work space, everything that has to do with, human capital, that is very much, employee-centric. We have around 200 million under management. We're an impact fund, so we invest in companies with a positive social impact, and it's something that we track from sourcing to portfolio management. And I've personally joined the fund around 5 years ago, so I'm a principal here, and we're a team of 10 people.
Very good, thank you, Alexandre. Enrico, why don't you tell us a little bit about you and Zanichelli Ventures?
Sure. I'm Enrico Poli. I'm the director of Zanichelli Ventures. It's the investment arm of one of the leading Italian educational publisher, Zanichelli Editore. We've been doing this since 2018, so it's almost 6 years. We specifically invest in EdTech, early stage companies, so pre-seed and seed, sometimes Series A. We invest little ticket, 50K to 250, 300K. So we usually co-invest with other lead investors like Educapital, and we co-invested together in a few deals, and we help filling in the round and hopefully bring some industry expertise to the table. We mostly invest in Europe. We did some investment in North America, but we are focusing more and more in Europe. And we also have some Italian-founded and Italian company in our portfolio. We are a team of 2, so still small, but growing, and that's it.
Thank you very much, Enrico. And Andrea, I'll just call you Andrea, if not I have to read your surname every time. So Andrea, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and Futura, and maybe you can share the good news.
Yeah, I will start with the good news because everybody's talking about that. And we just closed our We just closed a 14 million round, Series A round. And I mean, I didn't know this, but they say that it was the largest edtech round ever done in Italy. So I'm pretty proud to try to push the ball a little bit forward for the ecosystem. And it was a round led by Eurazeo, which is a French fund, and with the participation of Axon Partners, which is a Spanish fund. Both of them were in their first investment in Italy. So it's also really good news that international funds are starting to look at our ecosystem and investing in our companies. And also United Ventures, which has been with us from day zero, and they still support us at any point of time in our development. I'm 25 years old. I founded Futura while I was still in college, in university. And Futura was born because a lot of friends of mine were stuck between high school and university because they couldn't pass admission tests. And so we developed this platform that uses AI in order to make people learn faster, essentially. And I mean, what at the beginning was just an idea of me and Francesco, which is my co-founder, now is a 35 people team with 5 million in revenues, 16 million raised, and a team of 35, 36 people. And yeah, we're mainly active in Italy, and we are expanding to other countries starting next year.
Sorry, I switched this off because very good. Thank you, Andrea. And Sara, last but not least, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and Oltre Impact?
Can I take your mic? Sure. Thanks. So today I represent Oltre. Oltre is an Italian impact fund. We are a generalist fund, so we have no specific sector focus, but we are focused on growth. So we write checks from 2 million up to 10 or 12 in companies that are already generating revenues and hopefully raising a Series A or B rounds. I always say I'm professionally born and raised in Oltre because I joined the team 5 years ago. Today I'm investment manager and I support the team mostly in all of the, I would say, monitoring of the edtech ecosystem in Italy and in Europe.
We have to share this, I think, because very good. Thank you very much. So I want to start off with the first question, which is common to all of you. So I will start with Alexandre because it's always easier to start online. And the question is, so how important is it for an edtech startup to consider an international scalability from the beginning? So what are the main challenges, can you tell us, and the benefits of this approach?
So I think it's important. It's hard to be general about the question. I think it really depends on your business model and the type of company you're building and the segment you operate in. Some companies that are, let's say, for instance, in K-12 B2B, thinking global, international, European from day one is a bit more challenging than when you are, I don't know, I think the question, and Andrea might talk about this with more operational expertise than I can, but I think the question is always going to be around penetration of the market versus expansion. So how deep will you go in your existing market? What is the typical wallet share that you want to have in your user base versus going in different countries? And we have companies in our portfolio that chose the two routes, so going very, very deep in the local market before going international, and others that went very global from day one because the business model, because the product called for international expansion right from the start. So I think it's a bit of it's going to be a company-specific thing, but in the mindset and in the culture of the company, I would say it's very important.
Very good. Thank you, Alexandre. Sara, same question.
Totally agree with Alex. I guess this is not a very original answer, but yes, we totally agree with you. Of course, expansion, geographical expansion really depends on the kind of company and the kind of business model that they have. So every company will expand in a time and matter that is different with another one. But we believe that it's really important for two main reasons. The first one is that having a global or European, I would say, footprint allows the company not only to be on a more solid and sustainable growth, because it really makes the company rely on more markets. So you're more resilient, I would say, to different geographical specific fluctuations. And the second thing, especially if we're talking about EdTech, is being multi-country allows the company to be also on the forefront of technological advancement and trends, which can vary significantly according to countries, and being in different ones really give you a good idea of what's happening.
Thank you. Yeah, sure. Thank you very much. Enrico?
Sure, and of course I agree both with Alexander and but yeah, I will try to make 3 points, I guess. The first one is that you want to understand what kind of founder you are and what kind of company you're building. Of course, there are many ways to finance your company, and going to VC and financial VC is just one of them. Another one, of course, is just selling your product to your customers, which is somehow also the best one. So depending on the kind of founder you are and the kind of company you are building, thinking internationally might be more or less important. If you are thinking that you want to build a company that needs to raise money from financial VCs, I think you should, of course, you should keep in mind that at some point you will need, especially if you're starting out in Italy, you will need to think about international expansion. A financial VC will want to be able to imagine a path to a, I don't know, 100 million, revenue company. And usually, if you just compute the market size, limiting yourself to Italy, probably the market size that you are modeling won't be big enough for most VC, financial VC to be interested. Another point I think is at the same time you need to start. When you're at the very earliest stages of your business, when you're just starting out, you want to start. You don't have a lot of resources, of course, so you want to start from a niche where you can be the winner in that niche. You don't want to start, addressing too large of a problem. And so to identify a specific problem, probably you want to start from something that you know very, very well. And it's easier usually for Italian founders to know well something that some little piece of the Italian market. And so it might be better to start from something that only you know and where there is not too much international competition. At the same time, you need to know, if you want to at some point to scale, you need to start to figure out if, like Andrea did, and you will probably, how you move from a very Italian problem about test prep and how you expanded, but I don't want to to spoil the story of how you expanded. And one last thing, it's easy sometimes, especially if you are B2C, if you're an app, to just open up, your business in 150 app stores all over the world. it's also dangerous because it will spread your resources very thin, and so you will learn very little. So again, sometimes it might be easy to start addressing a lot of markets, but at the same time, when you're at the early stage, you want to learn as much as possible about a very specific problem. So again, I mean, think about it. It's not always the best solution to start too big.
Tricky. Thank you, Enrico. Andrea, you can also tell us a little bit about the story then now.
Okay.
Yes.
I think something that might sound funny if then we look at things in retrospective is that we never built Futura to raise money from investors. Like, you know, our goal from day zero was to build a business. And at the end, we ended up raising from international investors, mostly because the amount we wanted to raise was really hard to raise it from Italian investors. And therefore, we had to go abroad because otherwise we couldn't get the financial, the capital that we needed at the time. So our side has always been, let's make choices that make sense for the business, and then investors will follow, and not the opposite way around. We never said, oh, this would make sense because investors will appreciate it, and then, you know, after I raise money, then I develop something. We always went the opposite way around. And when it comes to being international as a company, I think there are different ways you can be international. And I was just thinking when the other guys were speaking about the first three ones that came up in my mind, I think, first of all, as a founder, you need to be international, which means in the way you think, in the way you behave, in the way also you try to implement your business, you need to think with a more international mindset. I see a lot of times Italian founders really being Italian in the way they manage people, really being Italian in the way they hire people, and in the way they treat people. And I think for us, a key differentiator was the fact that us three, out of three founders, two of us have always lived and studied abroad. So for us, Italy is just the location we started from, but not the end goal and not even the location where we studied. So it's actually, you know, we always had an international mindset from day zero. Then the second thing is how you develop your team. Like, if you want to raise from international investors, I think even in your team, you need to have some sort of international footprint, because at the end of the day, international investors look for ways to say no, and you should try to remove those blockers in order to them to say yes. And so for us, for example, a key thing was the fact that the eighth person that we hired in our team was our COO, and he's Dutch. And so by hiring somebody international early on, he was able to really spread an international culture within Futura. So every document was in English, every meeting was in English, and therefore, even when we talk with international investors, it was really easy to have a conversation with them because we already had everything, we already managed the company in English, we already had everything about our business in English, and so it was really, really easy to interact with them, to show them what we were doing. And then the last one, I think, is the market, because, I mean, we raised a round from international VCs, and we haven't made a single euro from outside of Italy. Like, you know, our company is 100% Italian at the moment. We have headquarters in Puglia and Milano, and our revenues are 100% Italian. I mean, of course, with this round, we are going to expand abroad, but, you know, like, we raised without having that presence yet, mostly because we show with the other two that we were capable of developing this type of business that could scale abroad. I totally agree with Enrico in what he said. I think the most important thing to show is that you are targeting a market that could build a company that makes at least 100 million in revenues. Whether that market is in Italy, and we have plenty of examples of Italian companies like Multiversity in EdTech, they built a $500 million revenue business just in Italy, and or whether that market should be international from day zero. So I think at the end of the day, people should worry about what their company is and what type of market they try to go for, and then try to develop a narrative that helps them with raising from international VCs based on the actual needs and the actual structure of their business itself.
Thank you very much. I want to stay with you, Andrea, because we've talked now about, you know, attracting investments, and I want to ask you, what was like the key strategy you had to kind of attract foreign investments, and especially what were the critical aspects you had to manage when facing with, international investors?
Okay, so the first thing that I think was key is that we never thought about fundraising as a one-time moment. So we never thought about, oh, we're going to raise a round, so we start talking to VCs. We always talk to VCs. So, even we announced the round today. I had calls with VCs last week. I will have calls with VCs next week. We constantly talk with funds. We constantly build a relationship with them. I was actually texting Alex to ask him to come to Italy today to have some croissants together. But mostly because, you want to build a long-term relationship. You want to build something because then they know you, they know how your business works, they know the good and the bad about your business, so that when is the time to fundraise, then you have that type of relationship, and they can even overcome the bias that they have towards the Italian ecosystem and the Italian startups. So I think that was key, to start early on building relationships. And the strategy that we try to put, I don't think there is really a strategy, having a good business with solid unit economics and just being nice to people. I think at the end of the day, being transparent and nice
That's
is always
a
the
game
key.
changer, isn't it? Yeah, it's true. It's true. Thank you, Andrea. Sara, I just want to ask you about Oltre Impact. So you are starting to operate at an European scale, and so I just want to know how important is for an Italian educational startup to aim for internationalization and to start from the very first beginning. Thank you. And how much do you believe in the possibility of consolidating the European market with players that are integrated among different countries? And so, and how do these players like Oltre and how do these players play in this dynamics? So can you tell us a little bit about this, please?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Great, thanks. So yeah, I think there are 3 questions in one, so I'll address them one by one.
That's a bit complicated, but thank you.
So yes, Oltre was born as an Italian fund. We started in 2004 with a generalist approach, but mainly focused on Italy. And today we are managing our 3rd fund with 80 million under management, which has a mixed strategy. 80% of the fund must be invested in Italy, 20% can be invested in the rest of Europe. We are looking to expand that percentage in our next fund, which will be in fundraising in Q3 25. And so the idea is to be more and more present in Europe because of the huge opportunities that we're seeing, and that we're seeing also some peers of ours that are chasing these opportunities. And we would have liked to be there on the round 2, of course, but having a little amount of asset that can be invested in the rest of Europe, we have to choose very, very strictly. In terms of opportunities also of consolidating, I think that Alexandre also today has a very great example, a consolidation that happened quite recently with one of their portfolio companies in Educapital, with Edflex, the French company who recently acquired an Italian company who is also present today, which is of course me. I think there is a huge opportunity, especially because we have some very strong regional players in Europe, so strong Italian players, strong French players, Spanish, UK, which sometimes may be struggling to move abroad. Again, in terms of challenges, mostly we guess for what we're seeing with our portfolio and our past experience, because going abroad, one of the main challenges is knowing the market, right? Knowing sufficiently well the market, how it works, the ecosystem, and it takes time. It takes presence in the market. So sometimes you can accelerate that kind of expansion by acquiring. So I guess I believe there is huge opportunity. And in terms of Oltre's role, and I think investors' role in this kind of activities, first of all, facilitating the connection. So our work today also is to really connect among, as you were saying before also, Dalila, connecting with other players, other investors, to facilitate the first connection with companies in Italy and abroad, but also to facilitate the conversation. Not only the M&A process, the financial process, but really the interaction and I would say the post-integration, which is also one of the most challenging aspects of the M&A.
Thank you, Sara. Alexandre, because they mentioned you, I would like to ask you, so, because obviously being based in an internationally reality, what are the differences that you see in the way EdTech is perceived and founded in Europe compared to Italy, in your opinion? And if you have any lessons that Italy could maybe learn from the European market, if you were so kind to share them with us. I know it's difficult maybe to say, but just in your opinion, what?
So I think I'll try, but it's a very difficult question.
I know.
So I think, sorry, I'll jump on two different things that were said before, very briefly about what Andrea said about connecting and constantly talking to investors. Sorry, I wanted to jump on this. I think it's something that is often underestimated, but when you invest in a company, you invest for 10 years. And so when you invest in a company, you mostly invest in the founding team, and the vision. And so the more you build the relationship with the founder early on, and the more you get to know each other, the better and the easier the funding process then becomes. And on the other thing, sorry, about M&A, I agree with Sara that I think it's a very important part of a company's growth at some point, especially in Europe, where it's, you know, an edtech, where it's like a multi-local market rather than an international global market. You have specific, like local specificities, regional specificities, and then it's M&A often makes sense, both from a top line strategy and from a acqui-hire perspective. Then to your question, so I think it's difficult and would be a bit presumptuous of saying, you know, what can Italian founders or Italian, you know, the Italian market can learn. But I think there is a couple of things. I think one of the things is perhaps ambition. So for a very long time in France, but even in Germany and in other European markets, you know, the level of ambitions of edtech founders more specifically was perhaps lower than in other markets, like in fintech or pure consumer agnostic tech. And I think over the years it has changed, and I think it changed in Italy quite significantly recently as well. And I think that's one thing. You need to build multiple success stories to prove that it's possible, to prove that, you know, there is a market opportunity, that you can build big, consolidating, growing companies in Italy that have the ability to grow and go to the US, for instance, or go in Europe and buy companies in Europe. Then one of the other things is you also need, and I think that's what Andrea was saying, but I think the more you have international investors investing in Italian companies, the more the mindset will change. And I think the same happened in France. So, you know, I can't remember, but I think Insight invested in, you know, Bravo. You have a lot of investors, like European investors or American investors now looking at the Italian market. And I think this will make the market change, but it also means that you need to adjust as a company or as a founding team. You need to adjust to have a culture that is international enough to be interesting to international investors that might have biases about the market. And I think there was a lot of biases regarding the French edtech ecosystem. And then, you know, some companies have proved that it was possible to scale. I mean, Open Classroom, 360 Learning in our portfolio that raised quite a significant amount and expanded internationally. And now there's a large share of its revenue from the US. It's the more success stories you have to build on, upon, the more easier it gets. And then, I mean, you need to have some companies that build top-tier consumer-grade products or B2B products that are just as good as international companies, and they are, but that don't limit their ambition to being, you know, just a local actor. But I think, you know, from what we're seeing, and I think around the Futura, but others, in the market, I mean, it's clearly going in the right direction and at a pace that is probably even faster than what was happening in France, let's say, like when we raised the first fund in 2017.
Very good, thank you, Alexandre. And Enrico, so going back with you, so Zanichelli Ventures has a long-standing foundation in the Italian education. So I want to ask you, have you seen the ecosystem change, and what are the prospects for the future development? And because you have invested in many edtech solutions that were founded in Italy but based abroad, I want to ask you, why is this? So do you see that do you advise, let's say, startups to start from a foreign market and then maybe to move to the Italian one? And what are the strategies that you have adopted to support this international scalability of the startups you invest in? Once again, not an easy question, but this is my role.
Yep, and it's not just one question, so
Yes, exactly.
If
That's
I
the
don't
torture.
remember all of them, please remind me if I skip.
Yes, I will follow.
Yep. I honestly, as far as I remember, when I started in 2018, there was almost no ecosystem in edtech ecosystem in Italy. I remember, the first dinner that we had talking about Edtech Italia I mean, there were some pioneers like Talent Garden, like, WeSchool, and some smaller companies. But I remember visiting Didacta, and EduTech was the name of a company, not a sector. So there was a company creating educational toys, and the name was EduTech. So that I think a lot of has changed. I think one of the early goals in creating Edtech Italia was to put Italy on the map, because I started visiting Europe, and Italy just was not on the map in the international edtech ecosystem. Nobody was looking at Italy, and I think we succeeded. I use we, but I really want. I'm including everyone, in this room. The ecosystem is something that builds itself. You can't engineer an ecosystem, and there is still a lot to do. And of course, founders will complain there is not enough money, and investors will complain there are not enough good enough, companies. And it makes sense, because ecosystem is like, climate science. It's a very complex system where you need to have everything in its place before everything starts to work. So there is not a single solution. You need to have more talented entrepreneurs to have more investors, and you need more investors to have more talented entrepreneurs, and you need, a good regulation, and you need a welcoming, general, public, government system that appreciate the value of entrepreneurs. And you need an education system that create entrepreneurs and an entrepreneurial mindset. So it's a complex system, and we are getting there. I have no specific opinion about where an entrepreneur should incorporate their company. I've invested again on a young company based in Puglia, like the one. Like Futura. I've invested on Italian founder creating companies in Dublin, London, Delaware. It's the choice of the entrepreneurs, and the entrepreneurs should. I think what's important is that we don't force. The entrepreneur, like Andrea was saying, should make the decisions that are better for their businesses, and they should not have to carry what we call honoring properly or inappropriate burdens. So it shouldn't be a concern of the entrepreneur. I mean, maybe, but generally, we shouldn't force an entrepreneur, for example, to care about the development of some areas of the country. They may choose to do so, or maybe not. It shouldn't be something that is in policy, you know. And the investor shouldn't care, honestly. We should only care as investor about if the business works, if the idea is good, if the team is smart, and so on. Yeah.
Yes, it's true. I mean, thank you, Enrico, for what you said. Okay, I have one last question for all of you. I will start with Alexandre, and then we'll go just this round. So, if we consider like the growing trend that is consolidating in the European market, and I want to ask you if you can see a future where different players across the countries can dominate the edtech landscape, and how can such a trend impact the development of the educational and training sector?
So yes, I think there is consolidation in some markets or some subsets of the markets, not in every space. I think you have segments where you have more of a winner takes most market structure. So it does make sense. For instance, corporate training, you have quite a lot of consolidation happening there. And perhaps K-12 B2B, for instance, and some markets where you do see quite a lot of consolidation. I think it has two benefits. I think one is helping companies. It's going to help some companies grow and reach a critical size and becoming themselves, consolidators. So it creates some, if it works, it doesn't always work, but if the merger strategy works, then you create European champions that are becoming buyers and eventually, are potential, that are potential acquirer for future companies. From a VC perspective, I think it's also good when you see consolidation, because you do need to see some exits at some point, and it proves that there is liquidity in the market versus just rounds that are being raised, but with companies that find it difficult to exit at a fair price. So the more consolidation, the more the assets become attractive, and the more the companies and the founders can find good exit opportunities. That being said, I think the market is still quite young. I mean, the edtech market in general is still quite young, and like always, you'll have successive waves of consolidation and mergers. Some mergers will be very effective. I mean, I know that, for instance, in Italy, Italian Garden had quite an active M&A strategy. Like I mentioned, Sara mentioned, Netflix acquired, of course, me. So some companies will have this merger strategy, and the more you'll see, the more you have different waves and players, like larger players emerging. But it doesn't mean that it's a slow death of the market. On the contrary, I think it's just one wave amongst many waves of future consolidations as new products emerge, basically.
Thank you. So Enrico and then Andrea.
Can you remind me the question? I just missed it. Sorry. Can you remind me what
Yes.
was the question?
So the question was if you think that there's a trend that impacts the development of the educational and training sector, and if you see this because there are futures and integrated key players across different countries that dominate the edtech landscape.
Yep, I agree with Alexander, and of course M&A are a good thing. I think what I've been thinking, especially about the European market, is that we don't really know if there is a real possibility of a pan-European of pan-European tech giants. We are seeing, even in the sector, in my parent company sector, educational publishing, we are seeing some interesting development with companies like Sanoma, Clet, trying to expand their business internationally and all over Europe. Is this going to work? Are the European educational system similar enough that you can build synergies by M&A, by acquiring companies in different countries? You can build synergies so that the end result is more valuable than just the sum of the part that you acquired. I think we don't know it yet. We are seeing this happen. We are seeing the like DUI, the European LMS, which is interesting. We're seeing Go students trying to start from Austria and going pan-European and then global. But it's still too early to understand if the value that you create acquiring and creating conglomerates of different companies servicing different European education market is actually more valuable than just leaving each business alone. I think Europe is working toward creating a single job market, and then this is going to backtrack, and we know the Bologna process already gave us some sort of common language to move credits around, and I guess this is going to start impacting also, especially vocational training at the secondary level. So there is some uniformation, some standardization that is happening, and that is promoted by the European Union that could help companies creating European-wide educational service. But yeah, I think the jury is still out on this.
Okay, thank you. Andrea, one quick comment. Okay. We have to close. There is Matteo blackmailing us behind the curtains, so it has to be very quick.
Going to be super quick. So I think my position is super influenced by the type of business that I founded. I think for us, it doesn't make any sense to acquire edtech startups. I think for us, what makes totally sense is to acquire traditional educational companies, put our technology underneath them, boost the margins, and therefore scale those companies to a level that they weren't seeing before. I think that makes total sense for us, more than actually going for acquisition of edtech players. I think in general, conglomeration and aggregation of companies is the future, is the way to go. And I think that more and more scale-ups, the more capital there is in the market, the more the capital is going to be deployed on those type of activities and on more consolidation of the market. And also because, in edtech, especially in B2C edtech, you build brands. And therefore, it's super hard to enter a new market by creating a brand from scratch. And therefore, it makes way more sense to just acquire an existing player and scaling it. So that's my perspective towards that.
Thank you. Sara, do you want to
I'll be very brief. I think I agree with everything that has been said so far. Being very concise, yes, we're talking about a landscape and ecosystem that is very young, especially compared to the rest of Europe. I agree that there is huge potential, and I have two positive takeaways from this situation, which are, first of all, positive psychology from the consolidation, having more and more entrepreneurs willing to invest their time and experience in creating edtech companies. And the second is innovation. Of course, with consolidation of some areas, of some sectors and subsectors, opens up innovation in new subsectors that haven't been innovated that far so far.
Okay, thank you very much. So thank you very much once again to Andrea Chirolli, now I've got Alexandre Glaser, Enrico Poli, and Sara De Benedetti. Thank you so much to Matteo Bagnato, Donatella Solda, Edtech Italia, and all of you here today.